Hi everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Talking Cardboard. My name is Cory, and I am continuing on with the discussion of my top 50 favorite board games of all time. In this segment, I discuss my 25 through number 21 favorite games of all time.
Number 25.
All right, and my number 25 favorite game of all time was actually number 16 last year, so it has dropped a little bit, but is still staying strong in the top half of my top 50 favorite games of all time, and that game is Rajas of the Ganges. So in Rajas of the Ganges, it is a game where it's all about the dice. You roll out some dice, you're using them as basically your main resource in the game. That is what I love the most about Rajas of the Ganges. There is so much going on with the different things you can do with the dice in this game. The dice are really cool materials. They're made out of this translucent plastic material that looks really cool when you're playing with them, and it's not just about the looks of the dice, either. Obviously they look cool with being translucent and different colors, but those different colors actually have meaning to them. So you have different costs for basically different tiles in this game. There's actually a lot of different mechanisms in this game. Tile placement is one of them, and one of the cool things is you're purchasing tiles with these dice. The tiles in this game have different costs associated with them, depending on the value of the die rolled and the color of the die. So that has a lot to do with not only the value of the dice, but the color of the dice have a lot to do with how the game is played. There are different spots that you can place dice to basically turn them in for different colored dice and use those to purchase different tiles. You're placing these tiles out on this board. The board is really cool. You get your own personal player board in this game where you are actually building this path of tiles and trying to connect the paths to different temples on the outskirts of the board, and depending on how you connect those in different ways, you can get bonuses and different victory points based on that. There's a river on the main player board as well that you can manipulate this boat as it's going down the river, and that'll get you different bonuses too. But really the heart of this game is all about those dice. There's a lot of dice manipulation in this game. There's a lot of trying to use your different colored dice at opportune times, and whoever does that the best wins the game, and whoever has the most points at the end wins. So that is Rajas of the Ganges.
Number 24.
Okay, moving on to my number 24 favorite game of all time, and this game was actually number 24 last year as well, so it's staying very strong in the same position on the list, same as last year, and I think it'll hold strong, if not climb in the rankings as the years go on, because they do keep producing more expansions for this game. A brand new second expansion comes out for this game this year, actually, which I backed on Kickstarter, so I'm looking to get that very soon, and that should add a whole lot more to the game as well, and that game is Roll Player. What makes this game much more different than any other dice game on my list is the simple fact that you're rolling a whole lot less dice in this game, and what you do with the dice is very puzzle-like. It's probably the most puzzle-like game that I have on my top 50 games list. You're rolling out one more die than the amount of players. So for example, in a 3-player game, you roll out 4 dice. You put those dice in the middle of the table, and one by one, you go around the table drafting one die. When you draft that one die, you place it on your board wherever you see it best fit, and depending on where you place it, that will give you a special bonus ability that you can do with that dice or any other dice on your board. Such as adding values to the dice or moving them around and manipulating your board. And like I said, it is all about that puzzle. So each player board is very unique depending on the type of character you decided to start the game with, and each row has different goals that you're going after, and each row has like a different range of values that you want all of your dice to add up to by the end of the game. That'll get you bonus victory points. You've got these backstories and these alignment cards, basically and all these different goals that you're trying to do throughout the game in different ways. You've got everything from wanting your dice to line up in specific colors in the different columns or the different rows to, like I mentioned just a little bit ago, having the values all add up to a certain range of values per row. Your alignment card, you can basically You can basically manipulate that throughout the game to do different special abilities, which I'll get into in a second with purchasing cards. But depending on where your alignment card cube ends up at the end of the game, you can get bonus victory points or negative victory points depending on where that ends up as well. Like I was just alluding to, there are bonus cards in this game that you are gathering as well that give you special powers and special abilities too, like different armor or weapons. Or this game is actually very thematic for how puzzly it is. Like the name suggests too, so the role player name, you are basically playing out being a role player in a role-playing game, basically adding stats to your player sheet, and you're basically making your own character throughout the game, and by the end of the game, whoever made their character sheet the best wins based on how many points you got. Sounds more dry than what it is. I think they incorporate the theme very nicely in this game. For given the mechanisms and how simple it is, it provides a very thinky puzzle and some nice added theme. The expansion for this game really added a whole lot as well, and I'm looking forward to the new expansion that I backed on Kickstarter coming out soon this year as well. But the expansions just seem to keep adding more and more depth to the game, which is really nice. After you've played this game a few times, you do look for more depth. The Monsters and Minions expansion, which is the first expansion for this game, added monsters and minions. So you're actually going out and fighting these minions throughout the game to get victory points. And then at the end of the game, you have this big grand boss battle that you're doing with this huge monster. And if you can fight off the monster in the end, you get bonus victory points for that as well. So that adds some really cool things that you're not only just building a role player character sheet, but throughout the game and at the end of the game, you're actually fighting monsters during the process of it all. So that is role player.
Number 23.
All right, my number 23 game on the list was number 15 last year. So this game has dropped a little bit, but still holding strong in the top 25. Anyway, my number 23 favorite game is Five Tribes. So Five Tribes is probably my most thinky, maybe most crunchy strategy-wise game on my entire list, or in my entire collection for that matter, because in Five Tribes you start off with this board of randomly placed tiles. And on these tiles you have all these different colored meeples that are set out before the game begins. And on your turn, basically kind of like a Mancala system, you pick up all of the workers or all the meeples from one tile and you place one at a time as you go across the board. You have to drop the meeples off on adjacent tiles as you go, and depending on where you ended and with what color meeple you ended with, because all the meeples are different colors, that'll actually give you a special action. So like the red meeples are assassins, so if you drop off, your last red meeple, on a certain tile, you can actually assassinate another meeple on a different tile. If the meeple that you assassinated was the last meeple on that tile, then you get to actually claim that tile as your own. And the more tiles you claim for yourself, the more victory points you get at the end of the game. So that's really cool. You have white and yellow meeples that, depending on how many you collect, will get you bonus victory points too. And you can trade in white meeples for these djinn cards, these genies, and the genies will give you special powers and different ways to collect victory points too. So there is a ton going on in this game, and I haven't tried any of the expansions, which I'm really hoping to pick up sometime soon because I really love the game. But having said that, I really love the game just as a base game. I don't think it really needs expansions. They might be fun. Like I said, I haven't tried them, but this base game is just so great all in itself. This game does suffer a little bit from if you make a poor decision with where you're placing the meeples on the board, you could accidentally set up other players to have a great turn, or maybe a better turn than what you just had. So you can actually negatively set up other players' turns to benefit them more than yourself. So you have to be really careful of that in this game. You have to really think ahead. And having said that too, that can generate some analysis paralysis in this game. If you play with a lot of gamers that take a long time during their turn to decide what they want to do with their turn and to really map out the best solutions to everything, then this game is probably one to stay clear of, because it really can generate a lot of that. But if you play with gamers that are just looking to have fun and that aren't all about just winning at all costs, then this game is a lot of fun. And a game that doesn't ever get old either, because the puzzle is always there and is always different. The board is randomly set up with the colored meeples at the beginning of every game, and that randomness, and the tiles are random too, and that level of randomness just keeps every game fresh. And yeah, that's 5 tribes.
Number 22.
All right, my number 22 game is the first Alexander Pfister game on my list, I believe, and it is a good one. Alexander Pfister, definitely one of my favorite designers of all time, and this game does not disappoint for me. That game is Blackout Hong Kong. In this game, there is a lot going on. Everybody has a hand of cards that they can do different actions with, but what's really cool about this game is that in phase 1, the planning phase, everybody places 1 card face down, 1 of each in 3 different columns. And when it's your turn, you carry out those face down cards by flipping them face up 1 at a time to carry out those actions. You are trying to complete these mission cards that are on your player board. Throughout the game, you can purchase additional mission cards, and the different missions require different things. It requires maybe volunteering some of your resources to give those up for victory points. So if you have the required number of resources necessary for that mission, then you get a certain number of victory points. You've got, as you complete missions, you can put your cubes out on the board, and as you surround different territories on the board, you can place one of your houses out there, which gets you endgame victory points as well, depending on how many different territories that you have covered. There's also these search tiles that you're searching to try to get victory points with those as well, and it's very, very mechanically driven, very much a dry Euro. The theme doesn't really pour through in this game, where it's a blackout in Hong Kong, and everybody is trying to not really help out one another, but you're sending out these volunteers to help out the city in various ways, like collect water or food or batteries as a wild resource, and you're using them to basically help the city out the best you can to gain victory points. So it's a very, very minor, thin overlaid theme on the game, but anyway, that is what the theme is. Another really fun part of this game too that's really cool is the column that actually has the most cards left in it at the end of the turn actually gets bounced back to your hand, and you have to shuffle them and randomly choose one that gets sent to the hospital. So thematically, one person is getting injured as they're going and helping out different areas of the city. So as they're going out and scavenging or helping out whoever might be in need of some help, they are actually getting injured and sent to the hospital. So that's really cool thematically, but it's one of those mechanisms that you want to manipulate your columns in various ways to fulfill some of your missions, because some of the missions require you have a certain number of different colored cards in your rows all at once, or in the columns all at once, to fulfill that. And if you aren't balancing your columns evenly, then the column with the most cards gets bounced back to your hand, so then those colored cards don't contribute to a potential mission. So that's a lot of fun. It's kind of a little puzzle with yourself, as well as playing out cards to do different things on the board against your opponents. So there's a little bit of a solitary aspect and a little bit of also analyzing what your opponents are doing too. So there is a lot to love about this game, and one that I continually want to explore more. That's Blackout Hong Kong.
Number 21.
All right, so the last game on my list for today is my number 21 game, and it was actually number 49 last year. So this might be one of the games that has jumped up the highest on my list out of all the games on here, I believe, or one of the highest. It's jumped up 28 places, and that game is Heaven and Ale. One of the reasons that this game jumps so high on the list, or is jumping higher, is the same reason why some of these other games are jumping higher up on my list, and that's because I'm getting more plays of it, and I'm getting this game to the table more often, and that is saying a lot. I've got a lot of games in my collection. I've got a lot of friends with a lot of games. The Talking Cardboard crew, they all own their libraries of games too, and we're playing different games all the time, and Heaven and Ale is one that seems to find the table quite a bit. It's one that my wife and I enjoy a whole lot. It's one that the Talking Cardboard crew and I enjoy, and pretty much anybody I've ever shown this game to has enjoyed. But I can definitely see it falling flat in a lot of groups too, because this is a dry Euro. In Heaven and Hell, you have a rondelle style board where you are jumping from tile to tile or spot to spot, and depending on where you jump, you are taking the tile that's on that spot to place on your own player board. But what's really cool, the mechanism in this game is that wherever you jump to, you then can't jump back to a different spot. So if you pass up on something that you may have wanted to try to jump ahead and get to a tile before somebody else does, well, that's too bad. You can't then go back and take a previous tile. You have to continue forward. You always have to progress further forward around the track. So that is something you have to be very careful with. It's a constant game. It's a constant struggle in your mind with how far forward should I jump to what tile to get there before my opponents. But do I really want to jump that far forward? Because if I do, I'm passing up these 3 or 4 other tiles that I could potentially want for my player board too. So it's a constant struggle with who's going to take what and when and how far forward should I jump and to take the tiles. And coming back to the player board, like I said, the sunny side and the shaded side, what that has to deal with is that when you place a tile on the board on the shaded side, when you trigger that tile, it'll produce that much money for you. When you do that, when you trigger a sunny side tile, that'll actually produce victory points for you. So it's a constant balance. Money is extremely tight in this game. Points are extremely tight in this game. And it is a constant balance of when do I place a tile to want to take some more money, or when do I place a tile to gain some more potential victory points. And if I do too heavy on the sunny side to get victory points, I won't have enough money to buy a new tile, because all these tiles that you're landing on cost you money. And if you're not focusing enough on the shaded side, you won't have any money to spend. So you won't be able to buy any more tiles, and you're kind of out of luck at that point. So it's a constant struggle, a constant battle with what side of the board to place on. The tiles are different beer ingredients, hence the name Heaven and Ale. You're actually monks that are brewing beer in this game, so it's kind of a unique theme, but it's a lot of fun. You just have to kind of roll with it. But anyway, you have different ingredients like wheat and barley and hops and water, and these different ingredients that go into beer, and those are on the tiles. The tiles have different values to them as well, and if you're placing those valued tiles on the shade side to collect money, that's all fine and good. But on the sunny side, when those trigger, then you actually increase those ingredients on a separate track along your player board. And at the end of the game, the end game scoring, or the mechanism of the way you figure out your final score, is very unique too, because there's this multiplier at the end of the game where, depending on how far your furthest token has gone, that'll trigger a ratio with. It's kind of actually really hard to explain now that I'm trying to explain it on camera for the first time, but it's basically how many spaces back do you have to move your furthest forward token in order to bring your tail token that far forward. So the ratio might be 3 to 1, so you might have to move your frontmost token back 3 just to move your back token up 1, and you keep doing that, back 3, up 1, back 3, up 1, until all your tokens cluster together, and wherever they meet is the multiplier and the total value that you're multiplying it by for your final score. You're trying to increase all of the ingredients, or most of the ingredients, quite equally, because you don't want to have 1 or 2 trailing so far behind that it has to catch up in such a way that your entire group gets pulled back because of it. And the further back your group of ingredients get pulled, the lower amount of victory points you get. So you really need to focus on the majority of your ingredients getting pushed ahead and pushed forward. You can't just focus on 1 or 2. You have to focus on almost all of them. Otherwise, you're left with a real poor score. I've seen this game end in 5, 6, 7 points. I've seen games that are 12 to 8 in a 2-player game. Other scores that might be in the upper teens or in the 20s. So it is a very low-scoring game, and that might be part of the reason why I keep coming back to it too, because I really want to get that better score. It's pretty humiliating when you end the game with only 5 or 6 victory points, and it's that much more of a reason to want to get it to the table again to get better at it and at least try to get more victory points the next time. So It's a fun puzzle, really crunchy, very strategic, but very dry. So you have to be kind of more into that and willing to play a dry game that's very themeless, but has a lot of fun tile placement to it as well. So anyway, I hope I explained that the best I could. Hopefully you understand it for the most part, but that is my number 21 game, Heaven and Ale. All right, and that does it for today's list. Like always, I really appreciate you all watching and taking time out of your busy schedules and your busy day to sit down here with me at the table and go over my top favorite board games of all time. Leave comments below with your favorite board games. I'd like to see what everybody else is playing and what your favorite games are and how it compares to my list. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. We always appreciate that. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Every subscription to the channel really helps us out a lot. Every like to the videos really helps us out, and we just want to continue to make the videos better and better quality, more videos, and just really add to this whole thing. And with that being said, you all have a great day, and we'll see you next time.